tal? ¿Cómo les va? Hoy vamos a ver una película, no, bueno, un tutorial clínica de Joe Pass, guitarrista de jazz. Así que bueno, me voy a leer las partituras y bueno, vamos a verlo de aquel lado. Uy, 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 ¿dónde está? Por acá. Pimbi, 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 acá.
Hi, my name is Joe Pass, and today I want to talk about building single lines on various chord changes, chord patterns, or maybe just individual chords. But before I start that, I'd like to maybe you would like to tune up. So here's a note to tune up with. It's A. You can tune to any note. Usually I use a tuner to tune up with. I find that's the best way for me, or else I give my guitar to a friend and have them tune it. And then there are other ways of tuning, that is with harmonics. And then this way I really learned when I started. But anyway, you choose your own way. Before we go into building these single lines, I'd like to give you a little idea of how I look at chord changes. First of all, I look at chord changes as very basic. Major, minor, and dominant seventh are the only ways that I look at chord changes. I'm not interested too much in whether a chord is a C major, 9th, 11th. I just want to know if it's a C major or C minor or a C 7th. And in the dominant family, I include the diminished chord as a dominant 7th flat 9 chord, and I include the augmented chord as a dominant 7th raised 5th chord. So in the dominant family, the diminished and the augmented become dominants for me. I use them. I put a root on the chord and use them as dominants. So when you look at chords, the only thing you have to look at is the chord a major, minor, or a dominant. And so simplify your thinking, and thus you can build lines that are easier to kind of picture or hear in your ear. When you're playing chords with all complicated intervals on them, or notes, like a C7 flat 9, raised 9, flat 5, that's too much, too many numbers and too much to try to incorporate in your playing. Just want to know whether it's a C7th or C minor or a C major. Before I finish this portion and we go on to tape some lines for you on these major, minor, and dominants, I'd like to talk a little bit about my right hand. I'm in this case using my fingers, and I play mostly with my fingers, and it's a good idea, as I have said before, to learn to play with your fingers, finger style. It's not hard to do. You just put your hand on the guitar and sit there and watch a television set for a while, and your fingers will fall the way they are most comfortable, which is not the classical way. They will fall for yourself the way they are most comfortable, and you use your fingers. You can play a lot, especially if you're playing solo guitar, you can play a lot more freer, a lot more counterpoint and so forth. Playing, and I don't have any particular set of fingers. I'm not playing like, I sometimes play one finger twice, two fingers, whatever is most comfortable. I don't have any system, and you don't need a system. Only what works good for you. And I use a pick. The pick in this case, I use a very small pick, a half of a pick, and it's just a idiosyncrasy of mine. It's a habit, and I don't suggest that you use a small pick. I don't suggest you use a half a pick. I suggest you use a small pick, but not in this case this small. This is what I do. But I find it very difficult to use a pick that's large, because I think the closer you are to the strings, the better feeling you have for the instrument. So that's why classical players actually, I think, feel the instrument, because their hands are on the string. Anyway, the pick is... When I'm on a string, it's alternate. Down, up, down, up, down, up. When I change strings, it's down. Even though it should be alternate up and down, I don't do that, so I always pick down, even if I'm going back. If it's two down. Once in a while. Very seldom. So you find my playing has very little of... very little back picking. I think you get a lot of definition when you pick down. This is all, by the way, G7. This is G7th augmented. A lot of playing in this case, for me, I do a lot of pull-off, hammer, and slurs. I'm picking the note. If you want to practice it, you should practice like this. You have to strengthen this finger. I think the weakest finger for most players is this finger here. This. So. See, that's not picked. It's not. That's hammered. Okay, as I said, we would choose some chords, and I will play some lines on them. First, I'll start with just one basic change, and I'll keep everything in the key of C. And naturally, you know that if you play in another key, it's the very same principle, the very same idea. So, but key of C would be the easiest key to give examples in. So, for instance, if I have a C major chord, major seventh, but I call it C major. First of all, I use very little arpeggio, so you would hear very little of in my playing. Now, it's not that it's not done or it's not good, it's just that I don't do it. If I were to play a line in this, with these intervals in mind, C and B, I would play it this way. Starting on the root and ending on the major seventh. Very seldom do I play or. So, this is a line on C major seventh that just comes to my mind. And this line comes from here. Now, if you're going to play, you should also be able to play these lines in other places. So now, once again, here's C major seventh, and here's another line. In many instances, repeating a phrase an octave lower is done a lot, and it makes it for a longer line. That is, in this case, using the 11th. But it has to be pure. Now, once again. If you cannot repeat the line that you played, it is obviously not anything worth playing, because it means that it didn't come from your head, and it's not music. It's maybe a kind of a geometric movement, like some people will play 3 frets across, or things like that. Which are exercises or movements, but they are not music. They are not, in a sense, your music, your identity. And the object of playing lines is to be able to have a kind of a style of playing or a identity to your playing, so that when someone hears you, they say, that's so-and-so. That's it. So if you can't repeat the line that you're playing, it